Would you rather California secede or rejoin Mexico? Rejoin Mexico. I would love, as a Californian, I would love for this wonderful state to be under the watchful rulership of Claudia Sheinbaum. Okay? That's what I would love. Yeah, unite California with the watchful rulership, with the original rulership of Mexico. Slammer post about the new naming of the Gulf. Oh yeah, I saw this. I mean, this is just like, dude. If an American-owned application changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America is that big of a deal? Is that big of a deal for you? This is low effort stuff, okay? It's basically another demonstration that we have no motion. We've lost it, you know? It's just like, this is what we're stoked on. Oh my God, it's awesome. It's amazing. I can't believe, like, nobody cares. I don't understand it. I genuinely don't understand how this is a significant move. This is stuff Erdogan would do is true. By the way, in Saudi, my Google Maps says Gulf of Mexico, in parentheses, Gulf of America. Yeah, I think for outside of the United States of America, it still says Gulf of Mexico, and in parentheses, Gulf of America. Erdoğan bile böyle saçma şeylerle uğraşmıyor. Yo, arada yapar böyle. I work in the Gulf of Mexico and no one calls it the Gulf of America. This is some freedom fries, dude. That's what I mean. This is like, oh yeah, we're gonna rename French fries to freedom fries. Like, who cares? Like, even if this was, here's my take. Okay, this is such no motion. Like, changing the name of Gulf of Mexico on Google Maps to Gulf of America is unimaginably low motion. No motion whatsoever. It is akin to when the American government decided to change the name of French fries to freedom fries for a brief moment, only to take it back. It just doesn't, like, this doesn't impact anyone's lives at all. It also, and this is perhaps a little bit surprising of me to say, it also is not unwarranted. Okay? It's one of the few instances where changing this from the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America is not like that insane of a demand. Okay? Listen to me on this one. Okay? One, the United States of America is not the only American country. It is literally the continent. And there's also a ton of coastline on the Gulf of Mexico that the United States of America also has. So not only is it pointless, but it also genuinely is not like that insane, I guess. You can say that the Gulf is surrounded by the continent of America. Exactly. So it's like, it's a very weird thing that the worst people are pointing to. It's a very weird thing that the worst people are pointing to as like a massive victory or whatever. It's so dumb. And ultimately, I think it's just not significant. I don't know if this is truly, because whenever Trump does stuff like this, there are like the conspiracy blue anon liberals that'll be like, this is actually to make treaties void, or this is because Donald Trump is going to engage in drilling or whatever. Like, he didn't change the name to the Gulf of Trump, right? As Fizz also said, it's correct. It's like he changed it to Gulf of America. It's not like that crazy of a demand in general. And also, it's basically just on Google Maps, which is an American, it's an American company. Don't forget to blast off. I already did. It's useless. It's petty. And also, simultaneously, in a weird way, it's not like the worst thing. Do you know what I mean? Because, like I said, this is the continent, this is the North American continent. And therefore, it's valid to say it's the Gulf of America. So it's one of those weird things that Trump did where I just don't care about it at all. And I don't think it's all that significant. I think ultimately the other stuff that he's doing is way worse. You shut up right now, law. It's not the Gulf of the United States of America. It's the Gulf of America. This must be so cool if you're a idiot. Yeah, no, that's the other. This is the correct take as well. It's just like, it just is not Like, I think a part of the reason why Republicans really like this is because they're stupid and they think this matters. They think this is like a massively consequential thing. Like, it shows American dominance, right? It's just a thing. It's not that significant. And it makes no sense to hype this up as though this is the best thing that's ever happened. Okay? They've done it. Gulf of America, like Pog. I'm pogging right now. This is so sick. In the Donald Trump is destroying this country paradigm, if I were to do a tier list of all the awful things that he's done, this doesn't even make the first 50. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this does not crack the top 50 at all, especially because if this was done in collaboration with like Mexico as well, and it wasn't Trump doing it, and it was like, hey, in order to showcase our friendship, like, and the fact that we are on the same continent and we are incredibly important allies, like, we are now switching the name of the Gulf of Mexico in unison with the Mexican government to the Gulf of the Americas, something like that. Like, most people would go, okay, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, in the past 2 weeks, we have not, in the past 2 weeks, it's about to be his first month in, Donald Trump has done so much awful so much that it makes no sense to spend any time on this. Hasan, you're trying to explain change to a chat that had a meltdown when you change mic cover colors. Fair. True. But yeah, this is all aesthetics. Why would it be the Americas when it's just North America? Okay, Gulf of America is actually a decent naming convention for it as well, for the record. But again, it's silly stuff. It's low motion. He's an old white guy. Like most old white guys, he loves maps. I think he sees changing the map in as many ways as possible as the lasting legacy he will have. Obviously, there are other reasons for Canada, Greenland, and Panama, but I think the hubris is another factor. Yeah, it's just like a silly thing. It's low motion. It's silly. It's perfect for Donald Trump. It's perfect red meat for his base that they can just like add on to all of the amazing things that our glorious president is doing. It's like, fix the goddamn egg prices, man. Okay? What happened to tackling inflation, you dingus? That's what you ran on. What happened? Instead, it's business as usual. And the irony, of course, is that nothing is different, even with his like handling of Ukraine, for example. Like when he talks about Ukraine, this is a big point of contention now. He just like openly is saying, we want $500 billion worth of your minerals. Okay? That in and of itself is literally, and I cannot stress this enough, identical to the ways in which we have interest in Ukraine from the jump. Okay? It's just openly stating that reality. That's the only difference between Donald Trump, is just that he says the quiet part out loud. Okay? That's it. Just like the Biden administration also quietly was trying to do a mass relocation initiative for all the Palestinians, and the Egyptian government said no, the Jordanian government said no, they all basically said, no, that's a ridiculous thing. We're not going to do mass ethnic displacement in the Gaza Strip. Donald Trump was like, no, you have to do it. That's it. It's not quiet, it's just loud, but the policies don't actually change. To be fair, Mexico's an indigenous name. America is a colonizer name. I don't really care, though. What's really crazy is how quickly certain cores have caved, like TikTok. Yeah, no, there is no resistance whatsoever to this iteration of Trump. That much is a certainty. If anything, I think every institution is basically telling you that reality over and over again, and there is seemingly no counter to this kind of nonsense anyway. Yeah. The craziest part of me about him saying this stuff out loud is how he was impeached over doing what is in essence the same type of quid pro quo with Ukraine. No, there's a difference between the initial impeachment for his quid pro quo with Ukraine. That was for his own personal, that was directly to over the person that he was running against, right? He wanted dirt. He was like, there are congressional approved, Congress approved weapons that are supposed to be transferred to you. I'm going to do something that is unconstitutional and stop. those weapons from going to you unless you give me some blackmail. Okay? If you give me some blackmail, I'll continue those weapons transfers. But if you give me some blackmail on Joe Biden, I will, I will continue the weapons transfers flowing into Ukraine. That was for something that is like deliberately his own personal. That was something that he did specifically for his own personal gain. It was a very selfish thing that he was doing. So that's a little bit different than when he says, Ukraine, if you have a lot of rare earth minerals, I want it. We'll keep giving you weapons, but you have to give us the minerals. That in and of itself is just American foreign policy laid out in full display. It is very similar to when Donald Trump, the last time around, basically turned around and said, after it came out that MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, had assassinated Jamal Khashoggi, an American legal permanent resident and a Washington Post journalist, when he got him, when MBS basically assassinated him in the Turkish Saudi embassy, okay? And when that happened, everyone was like, "Whoa, what the hell? Are you still gonna give weapons to Saudi Arabia?" And he basically turned around and said, "What are you gonna do? Do you have $1 billion? If they don't buy it from us, they're gonna buy it from somewhere else. Do you have $1 billion to buy these weapons? Somebody's got to buy these weapons." That is American foreign policy. But you rarely ever hear American foreign policy be so openly explained in this way. Usually, Democrats at least know that you have to masquerade as like someone who cares about the rules and someone who is interested in, upholding a certain moral position, a certain moral posture. That's why the Israel stuff under Democratic rulership was incredibly difficult for them to deal with while also propagandizing, because it was very obviously at odds with the international rule-based order, right? It was very obviously at odds with that, and the Democrats could not contend with that reality, and they had a very hard time taking a defensive posture in the ways that they normally would. Trump doesn't do that. He just openly will be like, "Yep, what are you going to do about it? Yeah, this is it. This is my thing. I'm going to get money in return for all the weapons that we're giving to Ukraine." That's it. That's a good thing, no? I don't necessarily think it's a good thing because it still continues American foreign policy, and that is damaging and devastating for the entire globe. So I don't think it's like necessarily a better thing. I mean, and as we saw after the first Trump administration ended and the Biden administration began, it didn't really change the dynamic for the Democrats at all. I'll give you the best example of this. Donald Trump considered the Ansar Allah administration, the Ansar Allah movement, to be a terror group. Okay? Why did he do that? Well, because Saudi Arabia was pummeling Yemen at the time. They were doing a genocide in Yemen at the time. For those of you who don't know, against the Ansar Allah movement. And Saudi Arabia had his own dog in the fight, basically. They had their own parallel government that was the initial government originally. And Donald Trump, being MBS's favorite guy, MBS, who also obviously purchased a bunch of Jared Kushner properties and gave Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, billions of dollars. Donald Trump did the bidding of both Israel and Saudi Arabia willingly. For Israel, he put sanctions on the former ICC prosecutor. He's putting sanctions on this one as well, by the way. And for Saudi Arabia, he put the Ansar Allah movement as a state designated terror group. Okay? Now, under the Biden administration, the argument I was making is that this is still a continuation, right? Like American foreign policy goes in one direction. The Biden administration took the Ansar Allah movement out of the state-sponsored terror designation, and that came, of course, alongside China coming in and cutting a side deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, normalizing relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The Yemeni retaliation was far too much for Saudi Arabia, and therefore, for them, they basically wanted to put an end to the fighting anyway. Okay, for financial reasons, so they did that. And the Biden administration took Ansar Allah off the terror designation. But what did the Biden administration do after October 7 and Israel doing a genocide in Gaza? The Ansar Allah movement came out and was the de facto government of Yemen at this point and said, we are going to put a blockade on the Red Sea. We are going to intercept all vessels that are going through the Red Sea, whether they are directly connected to Israel or they're stopping at Israeli ports or in any way, shape, or form is like, not collaborating with this blockade. As long as Israel is still doing a genocide, this blockade will continue. And they started doing that. They started intercepting ships. They started taking ships. They started taking hostages. Okay? And the American government called that piracy, and the Biden administration started Operation Prosperity Guardian and put the Ansar Allah movement back on the terror list. So it's literally a continuation. No matter what, American foreign policy, it doesn't deviate all that much from American foreign policy does not deviate all that much from one leadership to the next. There is a direction that it's going in almost always, regardless of whether a Democrat is in charge or a Republican is in charge. That's it. Because foreign policy is uniparty in this country. The Democrats, on the one hand, will do their very best. The Democrats, on the one hand, will do their very best to basically try and make it seem like what they're doing is at the behest of a international rule-based order. Laughable notion when they are attached to Israel by the hip and are allowing Israel to continue doing a genocide with the weapons that we're sending to Israel. But they still try to manufacture consent for that, right? That's why they did the port, for example. Remember the port? The $250 million port that was basically just for Israel, for America to say, no, Israel's letting aid into Gaza. See, we have a port there. Port never worked. Didn't matter. The one time they utilized the port was when they, used it for an Israeli military campaign, as a matter of fact. It was a floating pile of trash. It never actually operated, but it didn't matter. The real reason for the port wasn't actually to offer additional aid to the Palestinians. Because if they wanted to offer additional aid to the Palestinians, they could have done so by forcing Israel to bring in more aid trucks into the Gaza Strip. They didn't have to build a $250 million port. No, they did that because Israel was refusing to let in aid. And this offered some semblance of plausible deniability to say, see, they let us put the port in here. Clearly, they care about getting in as much aid as possible, but there's just logistical problems. $250 million just for that. Tell me about how Doge is going after government funding. Okay? Yeah. They only used the pier for one hostage rescue operation that ended up killing 250 Palestinians in the process, by the way, famously. Here's the timeline on the port. $230 million U.S. Gaza aid pier opens on May 17th. May 25 is damaged. June 7 is reconnected. June 9th, UN pauses distribution after Israeli forces kill 274 Palestinians. June 14 is removed. June 19 is reconnected. June 28th is removed. July 9th announced it will be briefly reinstalled and permanently removed. 250 milli for a decently sized port is not that bad of a deal, though. It is a horrible deal because the port was not utilized at all for actual humanitarian aid purposes, especially considering that the real way to put humanitarian aid on the ground was by forcing Israel to send in more trucks when Israel was refusing to send in more trucks. There's no need for a American portable port. The one time that they actually used the port was for this military operation too. They did the Timu port. It was ridiculous. It was a $250 million marketing initiative. That's what they spent it on. Okay? That's what they spent it on. Lights $250 million on fire. Holy shit. Wow, this is a great deal. I mean, you just described the Pentagon, by the way. And also now we have American mercs as well. More than 100 American mercenaries now in Gaza. UG Solutions paying $1,100 a day with a signing bonus of $10,000 for the U.S. Special Forces veterans. The super sick, totally illegal operation where they pulled up an aid truck and then just started blasting anyone in sight. Yeah. So at the time, What was American foreign policy? It was called a pier. Not sure why you're saying a port. Whatever, pier, port, semantics. What are you talking about? It didn't work for either anyway. Okay? It was a portable pier that they built, and it didn't work. But it was never supposed to actually work regardless. Okay? That is my point. So when Donald Trump says like, "Oh, we're going to finalize the ethnic cleansing of Gaza," make no mistake, that is a part of American foreign policy. That is a part of the grand design that America has. Now, are there actual naysayers within the State Department? Absolutely. Just like there were people who also criticized Biden from within the State Department. When Biden was attached to the hip and letting Israel do whatever it wanted, there were plenty of people who were saying this is going to diminish our soft power capabilities around the world. Everyone is looking at us and recognizing that nobody cares about the international rule-based order. If our soft power capabilities go away, then all of a sudden the only thing we have is hard power. That in and of itself is not going to be good enough. Okay? I thought your content got nuked. The stream is evil. Yes, I am an evil streamer. If you think I am your enemy, and if you think I am evil in general, you really got to reorient your priorities. Unless you're already a Trump supporter, in which case, then that's fine. I mean, of course, I welcome Trump supporters saying I'm evil. That's understandable. I am diametrically opposed to the way you view the world. Anyway, Trump supporters are at least interesting with their hating. Yeah.